Hey everybody, I'm Ben Higgins.
Hey, I'm Serena Pitt.
Hey, this is Blake Moynes.
Hi, this is Alana Milne.
Hey, I'm Lindsay Hamilton.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching Bros Ceremony.
And you're watching The Bros Ceremony.
This is The Bros Ceremony.
Your journey's about to begin.
Recapping the week that was in Bachelor Nation and previewing what's to come in the next episode with some special betting odds.
Everyone can't wait to find out what happens next week.
Here are your hosts, Michael the Hound Dog Harrison and Adam Scully.
Will you accept this rose?
Will you accept this rose?
Will you accept this rose?
Be daring in the name of love. Hello and welcome inside episode 21, the James Van Riemsdyk edition. That wasn't a very good one. Of the Bros Ceremony podcast. Adam Scully alongside Michael the Hound Dog Harrison. And Michael, the Bachelor series never disappoints, and we're going to dive deep into last week's episode. I got to say, drama galore, no?
Well, I mean, yeah, absolutely. And as we've been saying for all these episodes, initially it was Carl, now it's Thomas. And as we'll get into, maybe they're going to have to pick someone else to be the one to create the drama, because every episode it seemed like there has to be a new villain and a new someone that everyone hates. And then potentially they're gone, and then all of a sudden they move on to their storyline to someone else. But yes, there was definitely quite a lot of drama and some good stuff as well. I like the first date, as I'm sure we'll start off with, considering it was the first thing in the show. That group date was pretty entertaining with all the lads there.
It was very entertaining with all the lads there. Before we get to that, you mentioned Carl. Some exciting stuff coming potentially. That's all I'm going to say about that. But you mentioned the group date, so off the hop, the last episode ended sort of with Thomas standing around. The guys asked him 3 or 4 times, listen, like, did you come on here to be the Bachelor? And eventually it was like, yeah, that crossed my mind. And then Thomas had the line saying, I have been a politician trying to say the right things. He said this to the camera. It was sort of like, maybe don't say that.
Yeah, well, if you're a politician, yeah, exactly. A politician might not actually say that they're a politician, but in a weird way, it's kind of interesting with Thomas that he's just, I don't know, he was just so honest about being dishonest, basically. I kind of respect it a little bit.
Wow, interesting. Well, we'll get to Thomas in in-depth detail because Thomas wasn't later in the show, because Thomas wasn't on this group date, which was Katie's Truth or Dare group date. There were a multitude of different things, of course. The dynamic duo, Tayshia and Caitlin, played a prominent role in this episode, may I add. But a couple of different things stood out to me. Michael, first of all, the mystery snack shack. That was something that was quite funny, where the guys were running around part of the Truth or Dare. There were probably 6 plates set up with sort of the covering, like if you're going to a buffet, when you could go to buffets when COVID wasn't a thing, and you could pull it out and get your scrambled eggs or whatever, and there was like plates full and they had to finish the whole thing. This was quite a start to a date. I can't, was it Mike who had to eat all the Virgin Mike, I think it was, who had to eat all the Twinkies? That'd be a lot. That'd be delicious, but that'd be like
be delicious for about 1 or 2 of them probably, and then oh my god, after a while, I think he said it was like 5,000 calories or something like that. It's pretty good, and I especially loved, of course, for some reason I'm jumping ahead a lot here today, but like when they at the end, I can't remember who it was, but it was giving Katie her own like mystery thing, and it was like, oh, it's gonna be so bad, the food in there. I knew it was gonna be amazing food, and it was. So
yeah,
my boy Trey.
That was your boy Trey when they had as Trey called it, his drunk food, which we'll get to in a little bit. But there were some other funny moments from that group date. The whispering sweet nothings, where there was the ear set up, and Greg was there, or there was someone there earlier. I couldn't tell you who it was, but Greg was there. And sort of like, she can't hear me, right? She can't hear me. Where basically you had to whisper. It was Andrew who was saying it in the fake British accent, and she was loving every second of it. But Greg was sort of basically the premise of said part of the date was you had to whisper sweet nothings into the ear for 1 minute straight without stopping. And Greg was sort of saying the 50 states or something, and Katie and the dream team were letting on that they couldn't hear him, but afterwards they're like, oh, how's Florida going? Like, that was pretty funny.
Super awkward and weird, and it made me think, oh, perhaps maybe she won't like Greg as much because it wasn't obviously very sensual in any way, shape, or form. but nope, as we'll talk about later, full steam ahead with that one. She definitely likes him. But I remember the early part of that challenge. It was like, "Can you hear us?" I think the guy said that. "Can you hear us?" And they're like, "No." Well, yeah, clearly they could hear you guys. Like if you had a brain cell there, you would realize that they obviously heard you say that. So that was Greg's fault on that one.
Another thing that really stood out to me out of that portion of the Truth or Dare was the waxing. And this is reminiscent of the scene in 40-Year-Old Virgin where Steve Carell is getting the whole chest waxed and he only lasts about, probably 6 or 7 strips. Michael, have you ever
Spoiler alert, Adam? Holy, for someone who hasn't watched the movies 20 years ago. Sorry.
Wow, that hit my funny bone there. Have you ever been waxed before?
I have never been waxed before. I've never even had a massage before, actually. Even though, work benefits, I could definitely have them. It just feels like
what?
I don't know. I don't know what. I've never had one, so I don't know what I'm missing out on. Basically, right? I'm sure clearly it would be good, but I don't even know where to sign up or how to use the benefits, and it just feels like too much work for me. So,
wow. Okay, so something you need to do, maybe like now that we're taping this in early July. Happy 4th of July to our American viewers and listeners. Happy Canada Day a couple days ago to our Canadian viewers and listeners. Now we're in the second half of 2021. Maybe you should make it your second half New Year's resolution, if you will, to start trying new things. Go for a body wax. Go for a massage. Do some tantric yoga with Matt James, like something along those lines.
I'll do the tantric yoga, sure. Massage, yes. Body wax, I don't think so. I'll pass. Hard pass on that one, I think.
And before we get to the group, the night session, of course, some of these Truth or Dare dates, there's always some sort of spicy food, hot pepper sort of thing. Now, we haven't seen each other in 3D in a very long time, but from last I recall, you and Spice are
nice.
Yeah, okay. Maybe I don't know you very well. I didn't. Okay.
You thought I didn't like Spice or something?
I thought you weren't the biggest fan of Spice.
What? And what God? What? Okay, I'm speechless.
This is our first time meeting each other. Hi, I'm Adam. Nice to meet you.
I did the Hot Ones challenge on the SC with the J show.
That's right.
Hot chips, and actually it was not too bad. I honestly had to play it up that hot chip. I don't know if people remember.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Now it's all coming right back to me.
I remember the producer was kind of pissed at me because he's like, "Why aren't you reacting much at all?" I'm like, I don't know. When's the spice gonna hit? It wasn't really affecting me. So then it's like, just take a massive bite of it. And then I did. And of course, at that point, it started to get a little bit for sure. But
right.
No, spice. I don't go out of my limb to have like 10 jalapeno peppers or whatever, but or whatever the ones they were having there. I know they were obviously very spicy.
Habanero.
Habanero, yes. I knew it wasn't jalapeno. But yeah, interesting, Adam. You do not know me at all, which is very sad.
Maybe we should just spend the rest of this podcast getting to know each other more on a deeper and more
being vulnerable.
And speaking of being vulnerable, we'll get to our vulnerable count a little later in the show, because again, I'm disappointed with the number of times I'm hearing the term. Maybe I'm just not listening to the show. Maybe I only counted a certain. Maybe we'll get to it now. How many times was the term vulnerable used in this episode?
I actually was kind of paying attention to that, thinking like, okay, yeah, I remember us discussing that. I'm pretty sure it was only 4 times. Am I right?
I had 5.
5. Okay, you're probably right. I think I might have realized it after the first one had.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh no, I was gonna make. Yeah, that's not that many. Maybe the producers were like, okay, Katie, you've said vulnerable, 12 times in like a 5-minute span earlier in the season, so maybe they told her to tap the brakes on that a little bit.
Our vulnerable count has been brought to you by the Nike Victory Red Driver from about 2005. I was trying to think of a sponsor that started with the letter V, but I could.
Volkswagen Das Auto.
Volkswagen. There it is. Yes. Nice. Well done. Anyway, so we get to the evening portion of said date, and that's where they're supposed to be. This was the truth part. Be truth, be vulnerable. And this is where you mentioned Andrew, who was just, he hit a home run all day for the most part, you would say, bringing the tray of food. We'll get to Trey shortly. But so Andrew played a big part of this, and Greg as well. May I add, one of my picks. Katie said she's starting to fall for him.
That's so interesting how the genesis of this how the show has changed over time here, because I know for a fact many years ago it was like you cannot tell anyone, basically you can't lead them on into thinking you're falling in love with them or in love with them, whatever, until right at the end. And now she's saying, what, it was episode 4 she's saying these things. So and again we can just continue to add that Katie has just been an absolute rock star throughout this whole season. In my opinion, I mean, I'm sure if I had to think about it more, which feels like far too much work, so I'm definitely not going to do that. I think she might be, without question, one of the best bachelorettes ever in terms of actually being not putting up with any crap at all. It's great.
You know, I know that Claire said "I love you" to Dale the second they met. So aside from that,
they met on the show, even though they already
wink, nudge. But I mean, the last I can recall, watching when a lead had said "I love you" to more than one contestant or future lover, if you will, on the show was our past guest Ben Higgins, when he said it to both Lauren Bushnell, rangefinder, and JoJo. And now obviously Ben is getting married to another lovely lady very soon. He had a bachelor party recently, which we didn't get invited to, which I thought was a little, I know, not great. So of course, no real way to segue from that. I just received a very strange text message. Someone just sent me a text that said digital touch message. And I can't,
I know those. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. This is putting me off.
Never received one of these at all?
I haven't. It's from the guy who gave me a golf lesson last week. So I'm very perplexed.
Oh, usually it might be like a heart or something like that. It comes up really cool looking coloring. Or it's possible that he could just be sending something with emphasis. Sometimes the digital touch messages, it's like, party. And it's like there are some things in the iPhone that are pretty interesting and pretty, some cool features, but I don't know a ton of them, but I have received that. So, but I'd be kind of interested to see what that text means right now, but.
Or it was just a butt dial. I'm not 100% sure. I'm not going to look at it because we are deep in depth in thought about the Bachelorette, because this has been a spicy episode thus far that we watched last week. And now things really start to up the ante a bit, because we mentioned Thomas off the top. And this is where the guys are all sitting around in the truth portion of the group date. Katie's still talking to whoever she's still talking to at that point, where Trey and Andrew start sort of going at it a little bit about Thomas. And at first it kind of seemed like, oh, haha, like whatever, dude, like, yeah, we'll be fine. And then Trey's like, no, like I'm going to tell Katie, because like Katie wants us to be truthful. Andrew called Trey Buzz Killington, which I thought was interesting. What were your thoughts on Trey, one of your picks, bringing up Thomas the way he did? Now, of course, we don't know how much of the conversation was. They could have been sitting there for 45 minutes and 5 minutes was this, but what was shown to the viewers from coast to coast was only the conversation between Trey and Katie about Thomas.
Well, I mean, I say the fact that my Trey and Andrew are my boys. So I picked both of them. So I was like, no, don't be fighting, guys. No. But I could see both points of why Andrew was basically saying, like, guys, like, why waste your time? Why? Because, obviously a lot of guys are complaining often they don't get a lot of time with her. So I could see his side of the argument in terms of like, don't complain, continue to bog the whole process down by talking to her about this, blah, blah, blah. Just focus on yourself. But of course, I also can see from Trey's side, it seemed like most guys were on Trey's side there, that like you have to tell her. But again, I feel like, as I said off the top a little bit, there has to be a new villain every episode. Initially it was Carl, all the guys had a pile on. Now it's Thomas, all the guys at the pile on. Now I'm sure it'll be a new guy that everyone's going to start to hate. I feel like there's a lot of insecure men on the show. So they're basically trying to probably egg Trey on to want to get rid of another contestant that would, Thomas. And so it feels like, they're just constantly trying to find that new guy to get rid of because they're scared that they may leave themselves. So I could see why Andrew was basically saying, just leave it. But then Trey's like, no, let's go for it. So I don't know. A long way of saying I'm on both sides of the fence on that one, which I hate to do, but I hated to see my two boys fighting. And so eventually Trey did tell, long-winded to say, Trey did tell Katie about how Thomas is not the nicest guy in the world, apparently.
And so obviously when this happened, Katie was taken aback, if you will, flabbergasted, maybe one would say. That's not quite the word up segment, but we're getting there. And, Katie was taken aback by this. She's like, really? Like Trey, like Thomas really said that he wants to be the Bachelor? Yeah, that's what he said. So Katie sort of stood there and waited. Thomas came back. Trey came back, told the guys what he said, maybe some jabbering back and forth, if you will, between Andrew and Trey. But then Katie addressed the situation with the guys and said, is there any more information I should know? Sitting around almost like a campfire to a degree. And, the guys talked a little bit. Katie pulls out the rose. And you guessed it. Who gets the rose? Your boy, Trey. So I guess the honesty, the vulnerability, telling the truth, it paid off here, didn't it?
I love that. Now, was that, I'm trying to remember now. There was a time, it might have been later in the episode, where Katie, to a bunch of the guys, was basically, oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. I had to have a conversation. Oh, no, that might have been after she said that with Thomas. She's like, oh, I'm sorry, guys. Like, I had a long conversation, blah, 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 blah. And she's like, yeah, I'm sorry. It's like midnight. I remember them saying it was midnight when she like addressed them. And then they were like, okay, let's go to the cocktail party now. So I was like, well, hold on. So the timeline of events here, you're saying at midnight, you apologized for taking up too much of their time. Then you had a cocktail party. Then that same night, there was a rose ceremony. What hell of a time did they finish the rose ceremony? Because as we've had previous guests on the show say, those rose ceremonies take forever. Did they just stay up till like noon?
Maybe. I mean, Katie did say repeatedly heading into that rose ceremony, sorry, I'm late. I think she said it 4 times.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is Katie, a stickler for time, doesn't like to be late.
Yeah. But honestly, I'd love to know more than any time before the timeline of events on that one, because it just seemed like, again, I have no problems because I work late hours, staying up till all wee hours of the morning. But people who have normal lives, unlike me, who have normal jobs, 9 to 5 or whatever, I don't understand. I don't get how they wouldn't be absolutely exhausted. How would you fare in that scenario? I
wouldn't do well. I mean, you know me from when, past years where we have had some waters together where, when the clock strikes 12:30 or 1 o'clock, that's it.
That's understandable. I mean, if you normally you wake up at whatever 6, 7 in the morning or something along those lines, I can understand why you'd be tired. What's that? I
said early bird gets the worm.
Wow, what a original! I've never heard that one before.
Never heard that one before. Okay, so Trey gets the rose. He's pretty pumped about it. I believe he said he was buzzing after that. So he gets the rose, and now things sort of take an interesting little step here. Sorry, I was clearing my throat because I have to say, clearing my throat, we had some good response from that social media post last week where which bodily function was it sort of thing from Michael the Hound Dog Harrison, and he was clearing his throat, which to me didn't sound quite like that. But anyway, I digress. So Katie's sitting there alone. She's got the rose ceremony, I believe, later that evening, and Tayshia knocks on the door, and that's the last person she was expecting because she had no idea Tayshia was coming. There's absolutely no chance things are going to switch. And, Tayshia says, someone from my past reached out to me. And
I'm just so amazed that the cameras were in my room. I didn't expect anyone to be knocking on the door. Holy crap, crazy. Oh, what a shocker. Okay. Nice try.
So, and what I loved about this was the teaser. They showed, 5 or 6 different element shots, as we called it in the sports biz, of sort of Blake tying his shoes and Blake panning up from his ankles to his kneecaps, and then Blake walking, and then the back of Blake's head where he kind of has a bald spot too, actually, and Blake sort of walking around, Blake, from the head down, just sort of walking around. And then, Katie opens the door, he's standing there, and she goes, Blake, and is sort of shaking her head. Initially coming out of the gate, what were your thoughts when you saw their first interaction? Because for me, it was sort of I don't know, man.
I actually thought that, yeah, I guess that's a fair assessment or whatever. But maybe she was just trying to be an actress there and faking that she was surprised to see that, because clearly I'm certain she was not surprised at all to see him at all. But I will say, when Tayshia tried to set her up or whatever, I feel first of all that Tayshia's better than Caitlin as a host. I don't know if you feel that way.
I agree. Yeah, she's more outgoing. Yeah.
Also, I always make fun of and joke about how, Tayshia would say vulnerable as opposed to vulnerable. She had a new word. I don't know if you noticed in this episode. Instead of saying conflicted, Tayshia said conflucted. Did you notice that? It's like, I don't. There's some of these words I'm not quite understanding them, but it's tremendously hilarious because you just have to be paying attention to the little nuggets, and you're like, oh, that's awesome. She said conflucted. I listened back to it 4 or 5 times. I'm like, yeah. I mean, obviously, it could have been the audio mix, but at least on that one. But we do know for sure the vulnerable one was
vulnerable,
was constant like that with that. But initially, the Blake, they certainly made it seem like she was very much uncertain. She didn't know what was going on. But then eventually they started talking more, and he uttered a line. I don't know if you noticed. I thought of you when he said it. He goes, basically, well, Katie, only time will tell.
Oh, I was going to say something different. Oh, okay. That's true.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say, because Blake said to Katie, you check boxes that no one else has. That was almost going to be my opener. I was contemplating between that one and whatever I said off the top here because I've forgotten already.
Yeah. By the way, you said there's like maybe 4 or 5 element shots of Blake. I wrote down that I think there was like 12 to 15. It was just oodles and oodles of them, which is funny. But excuse me, I'll now clear my throat.
Well, and interesting as you clear, Blake reached out to Katie via DMs. So this was said on the show. Now, apparently, I mean, obviously they didn't show the actual screenshot of the conversation, a la Blake and Kaylin from Bachelor in Paradise with that stagecoach thing where there was a whole ordeal, if you will, about the screenshots and the Instagrams and such. But so they didn't actually show this conversation between Blake and Katie on the air. But apparently Blake was just wishing her well. But Blake, being the good Canadian boy he is, just great manners. You know what? We'll get to Blake momentarily because he does reappear on this show, on this episode. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get from Blake. And Katie also said to Blake, this could be a dream or it could be a nightmare.
That was a funny line, but I also feel like it's so weird. She's like, I don't know, Blake, like you had 2 bachelorettes already. Like, I'm not so sure. Like, I don't know. Katie, Claire left on her own volition. Good word, by the way, volition.
Word up,
Claire
volition.
Left. There it is.
Unless you had something else on your.
I just thought of it right now. Bang. It's like
Smart.
You can't downgrade Blake. He had 2 bachelorettes. One of them left within 5 minutes. That's not his fault that she found love with Dale right away. So you can't. And then obviously Tayshia decided not to pursue. Was it Tayshia with him?
Yeah.
I always make. Yeah, that's why. It makes sense because Tayshia said it's a guy in my past. She decided not to pursue Blake. So again, that's not his fault. You can't be hating on Blake. Come on now, Blake's a good guy.
Can't be like bat shaming. Is that?
That's a great term. Yes, absolutely. Especially with Claire, because as we said, Claire was gone within 5 minutes of Blake showing up, basically. So come on.
Yeah. So we'll get back to Blake in a little bit because maybe he may or may not have reappeared in this episode. Only time will tell. But so of course the rose ceremony is that night. Katie has so much on her mind. She has the whole Thomas situation. Blake's entered the picture. Is she going to let Blake stay? But first and foremost, the guys are just talking about Thomas, and more Thomas. Aaron had the line about Thomas. It's global warming. He's on an ice cap and it's shrinking every day. I mean, how these guys get these lines, like that's kind of rude, but I thought it was pretty creative.
They probably have they do have so much time on their hands or whatever. So they're like, you know what? Let me just think of something that's interesting for the cameras probably. So, and obviously as they were, the guys were complaining about Thomas, that's when he had his discussion with Katie and he went to, to see her. And that's when there was perhaps it seemed like maybe a very vulnerable conversation was had with his walls down. Turns out it didn't necessarily go that way.
Yeah, a couple things. So Katie was talking to the Dream Team before, or maybe just to the camera, about how she was picturing hometowns with Thomas before this whole that he wanted to be the Bachelor conversation came up. Thomas enters the room. One thing I noticed right away, he's like 11 feet tall and sort of goes to sit beside Katie, like awkwardly close, and goes for like the handhold, and like he had to like pick her hands up, like she was not having that. But so they have this conversation. The guys are sort of sitting there like, where's Katie? Where's Thomas? Oh no. like Connor the cat guy, who had like 4 lines in this episode, was basically, I don't trust this guy. Like, I don't believe anything coming out of his mouth. And that's where, and then another big moment, the guys are sort of not yelling. Well, they were yelling. Aaron and Andrew were sort of yelling at each other. And that's where Michael A steps in and basically, takes the high road, goes to talk to her. And they have a nice little moment, as did Brendan from Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Not sure you noticed that.
Toronto, Canada, yeah.
No. On the name font, it said Toronto, Ontario, Canada.
Oh, good. I'm glad you said that. I didn't even notice that because, the first episode, obviously that's why you made that remark. Because, it did say Toronto, Canada. Or maybe it was just him saying Toronto, Canada. I can't remember exactly. But, Michael certainly seems like the voice of reason, the solid, gentleman that's going to perhaps sweep her off her feet type thing. So that provided a little bit of levity and sort of a nice moment to the episode. But go back to when Thomas was talking to Katie. I don't know if you noticed, he created a word that I Google it. I was like, I'm pretty sure it's not a word, so maybe this should be the word up because Thomas created one. It's so hard to even almost say. I wrote it down. It was. Okay, again, this is so demonstrized. He said demonstrized.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, I think he obviously meant to say demonstrated and like question mark. But yeah, he said demonstrate. Yeah. So I thought, okay, he's toast. I wish at that point she was just like, it was like, they broke the fourth wall, so to speak. And she was just like, wait, what? And just chirped him for not knowing his English words. That would have been awesome.
That would have been great. But there were, there's demonstrized, there's ostracized, there are a couple of sized words coming in there.
Ostracized, good word. That's a good word, yeah.
So, Michael, we've talked about Thomas throughout the majority of this episode. And during the rose ceremony, before Katie began to give out roses, Thomas steps forward and says, guys, I'm sorry. Katie, I'm sorry. Steps forward. This really sort of awkward and weird ordeal. Go through all the roses. Last rose, you're thinking, there's no chance, Thomas is saying. There's no chance. Katie picks Thomas. Boom, commercial break. Brilliant job by the Bachelor there. Then they go back. They replay the whole thing. My final rose, Thomas. All the guys are sort of jaws on the floor. Some guys swear. Thomas walks.
I think his name's Justin. You don't really show him a whole lot. His facial expressions all the time are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, he was just like, well, like his. I love his facial expressions. He could not believe it.
And so Thomas walks forward, sort of like, I got my rose. And Katie's like, back up.
Yeah.
What a moment by Katie there.
It was obviously very, very funny and entertaining. That basically she's just like, what was the exact line? Your bachelor audition ends. Basically, get the hell out of here. And obviously he left, with little fanfare and with his tail not between his legs. But it's like the whole point of she's basically trying to say, like, you're not going to be a bachelor, that you're not using this for fame, blah 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 blah. It was an awesome moment. It was hilarious. It was, basically never really been done, or at least that often anyway, where a Bachelorette would put a guy in his place like that. But by you doing that, you're just playing into his hand. It's like reacting to trolls on Twitter or sports columnists that want you to get that reaction. You gave him the reaction that he wanted, and now this is going to make him more popular to be on Bachelor in Paradise, because now he can go on and say, I'm reformed. I'm much better. I learned from my walls are down now, blah, blah, blah. You've literally played into Thomas's hands is what I'm saying. So maybe that was a producer decision. Like, hey, if you want to get rid of him, that's cool. Have this crazy sort of way of getting rid of him. That'd be awesome TV. Everyone's going to talk about it like we are now. But basically, you played exactly into Thomas's hands. And now he's, unless they really hate him, the producers, he's for sure going to be a Bachelor in Paradise. Don't you think?
I've said this time and time. I feel like every episode I say this. I enjoy doing these so much because I did not think of that at all. And spoiler alert, we do not rehearse the show at all. So
nope.
At all. But it's a good point. I mean, he has to be on Bachelor in Paradise now. I'm not sure how loved he'll be. I'm sure,
he won't be, but they don't care. They want people to mix it up on that show, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So Thomas goes home and Katie doesn't give another rose out, which I thought was interesting. And then they show Katie sort of walking away, knocking on a door, knocking again. opens up, and Blake Blake is naked, first of all, and I'd literally just woken up. I thought that was pretty funny.
I mean, if we are to believe that the show has nothing, unlike us, where we had nothing rehearsed, and that's actually the God's honest truth, I wouldn't be surprised if the Bachelor, like, oh, let's make this entertaining, because Blake was like, oh, I had no idea you're going to be stopping by. Well, you had something of an idea. If she absolutely would have said, no, there's no chance I'm going to be seeing you at all, they would have sent him home already. So at least I had to have had a decent thought. At some point, she was either going to say, yes, you're on the show, or no, you're off the show. So, but it was nonetheless, it was pretty entertaining, Blake. And obviously she decided to keep him in the process.
So Katie decides to keep Blake around. Michael, what are your expectations for Blake, who's been on this show before, for tonight's episode and for the rest of the season?
I remember a past guest on the last season we had, Taylor. She broke everything down.
Our Bachelor insider.
Yeah, exactly. She broke everything down in terms of, we've seen this person this many times in the previews and blah, 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 blah. I have watched the previews for the season, but I haven't watched it in depth because I still don't want to spoil things too much. So honestly, I can't remember if Blake was in much of those. But I honestly think he has a good chance of staying for quite a long time here. I really think the connection, the sparks seem to be there a little bit to me. Did you think they have a good chance here?
Yeah, I thought the sparks were there sort of right after, when they initially had, oh boy, oh God.
Take two.
When they initially saw each other for the first time, it was almost like Katie was rolling her eyes a little bit. It was sort of like, oh, Blake, but then sparks were flying a little bit. I thought for a second there might be a kiss when Blake walked out without a robe on, as Katie had specifically asked. He had a hoodie and boxers on. I thought there was potential maybe for a smooch. It was a good hug though. So I'm curious what happens here. I think Blake has a good chance. Blake, I want to say, was the 6th last guy to go on Tayshia's season before appearing here on the Bro Ceremony podcast. Yeah, so I think he has a decent chance. I really do. I know, I'm curious what happens now, because it's always this case. When someone new comes into the fold, there's always where were you off the beginning? Did you show up late? Did you lose your calendar or something? Stuff like that. I'm curious how the guys sort of react to him.
There's always vitriol, another good word there. When a contestant last season, what was her name? Heather. Yeah, she came back, and those women were incredibly rude to her. I understand them being their guard up a little bit and sort of they didn't like that, but they were actually honestly incredibly rude to her. Mean girls that I thought last season with that. So it does look like in the preview a little bit that Blake faces a little bit of scorn for coming back or coming onto the show, I guess. But I don't know. He seemed like a nice enough dude. I'm pretty sure after the initial shock, and then he's probably going to be buddies with Brendan from Toronto, Canada.
Or supposed to play hockey together.
Exactly. They probably did. And then
Beaver Tails together.
It'll be all good. Yeah, Beaver Tails. It'll be all good after that.
Yeah, they live in their igloos. Anyway, so looking forward to seeing what happens with Blake on tonight's episode with Brendan, the Toronto, Ontario, Canada native, of course. Where will Katie's heart go next? There are 16 guys, I want to say, 15 or 16 guys left in Katie's journey to find love. We've seen some drama. We've seen a lot of things. But Michael, the next episode's tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. Or if you're like me, now I don't watch it live. I watch it the next day. Yeah, that's another topic in itself. But Michael, before we sign off on episode 21 of the Bro Ceremony podcast, we each picked 3 guys who we thought had the best chance to win Katie's heart and leave an engaged couple. Who are your 3 and how are they doing?
Well, as we said earlier, Trey and Andrew, when they were fighting with each other, I was like, no, I don't want these guys to be, causing drama amongst the 2 of them. And then maybe she gets rid of both of them on a 2-on-1 or something. So hopefully that doesn't happen, because Trey, I love Trey. Trey's my favorite, I think, of the season. He's just a beauty. And Andrew seemed like a pretty cool guy too. And as I said, I could see his point of view on that one as well. The 3rd guy I picked, James, the guy who jumped out of the box. He hasn't done a whole lot. I'm starting to think he's probably going to be gone here at some point. They haven't really developed him much. So, but we'll see. As you said before, only time will tell.
Only time will tell. And of my 3 guys, Thomas was one of them. So he's gone. So now I only have two guys left, and I have Greg and I have Connor, the cat guy. So Greg, don't call me Brandon Dubinsky. He's got to be one of the favorites right now in terms of, Katie's falling for him already. I'm really curious where that goes forward. And Connor, the cat guy, they have this inseparable connection about cats. What more can he ask for? But Michael, as you said, only time will tell.
You could say that he's quite the catch. On that note,
I think it's time to sign up. Do you have any other final thoughts here? No.
Honestly, I'm thrilled that I ended on that high note there. Go out on a high note.
On that Dan high note, former Colorado Avalanche forward. There you go. I like that one. Well, this has been another fun edition of the Bros Ceremony podcast. Follow us on Instagram. Follow us or subscribe to us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter as well. We'll be posting some of these clips every week on our Instagram account. Over 400 followers. Not a big deal. Really enjoy doing these every week and looking forward to seeing what happens with Katie's heart next. Where will her love journey take her on the next episode? We'll find out starting later tonight. For Michael the Hound Dog Harrison, I'm Adam Scully. We'll see you next time right here on the Bro Ceremony.